Be consistent, keep the faith, do something the same over and over again, and it will pay off.
I want people to realize that they can start small. You don't have to start off with this massive production factory. And if you start small, you're in the game. If you think that I have to start large, you'll never get started.
Brand marketing is not about big moments. Brand marketing is about consistent, frequent, and disciplined actions. We have to stay focused on that. Welcome, everybody, to another show of Business Lunatics, the weekly show where four fearless loonies, today is only three of us, three loonies, pull back the curtain on the wild, the wonderful, and sometimes downright ridiculous world of entrepreneurship. And honestly, you have to be mad to be an entrepreneur. So, in any case, we're going to do this with no fluff, no BS. Let's just talk about business madness. And so, for today's show, we're going to focus a little bit more on brand trust, brand reputation, brand visibility. In other words, how do businesses win big in the marketplace based on their brand and their brand strength, and more importantly, how do we, based on where we are today, we're coming up to Thanksgiving of 2025. Let's figure out what this looks like for 2026. And on that note, Rochelle, you want to start us off?
Oh, God, yeah. You know, there's so many companies that I work with, and I work with a lot of small businesses, and a lot of the small businesses that I work with are under what I call the trades. They're the plumbers, the electrician, the trades. When they hear the word brand, I mean, they don't even know what the hell you're talking about. That a plumber is a plumber. But it's so important that if you are in what I call a non-sexy industry, it's even more important to understand the trade, what your brand is, because nobody else is doing it. Now, what is a brand? Brand, in my opinion, is how do we define a brand? And I always say a brand is what other people think about you. What are you known for? What is it that people can rely on you for? And that's when you say brand trust. What can when they think of your firm, what do they think that they can get from you? And how do you communicate that? So when somebody looks and they mention they need a fill in the blank, how can you be top of mind? So there's so many ways of doing it. And one of the ways that I've been pretty successful for myself, I always believe that you want to tell a story. What is the story about your company that based on that story, we can really understand what you do? What is your brand story? When you talk about your business, I always say, are you storytelling or boring telling? Do you have a story that represents your experience? How do you pull a rabbit out of a hat? What can I rely on you for? That's one way that I think it's very important to really focus on what are you saying about your firm. I think that, Melih, you go into a lot more detail about the aesthetics. Give us a little bit of a background on that. What's the difference? A lot of people think color is not important. Color is very important.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that
Consistent,
you really
consistent color.
focus on? So
Yeah,
let's look at some of the things that you kind of highlight, because you're really from the brand specialist that you notice a heck of a lot more than I do.
yeah. So first of all, I think just to kind of piggyback on something you said there was a few items. I think it's important to understand that branding is not just for big companies. I don't,
Oh,
I mean, the
I think it's the
terminology.
opposite. It's more
I know.
powerful. It's
Exactly.
the opposite. The
It's the
smaller you
opposite.
are, the
If
more
you
you
can
need
be known
branding.
like a Nike, just do it, or an IKEA flat pack furniture, but you're not going to pay a lot of money, and the Swedish meatballs are good.
Yeah.
That's great. But if you can do it as a small company, and I have a great example, there is a guy here, I forget his first name, but it's Russo Plumbing. He's got hundreds of trucks with the old guy's face on it. I happen to know him personally because he's in Entrepreneurs Organization with me. He sold that business years ago, but everybody knows Russo Plumbing because his brand is the old guy's picture on the back of the
Right.
truck with the yellow paint and the white paint. And
Exactly.
they just got to call Russo.
Right. And there's two parts to that puzzle, right? The first part that we're talking about, and Rochelle, you're right on target. Branding is not for big businesses. As a matter of fact, it's more important for smaller businesses. But we have to take two pieces into account. And Steve, your example is right on target for another one. First of all, color psychology is very important, meaning that what are the colors of your logo icon? If we think about the logo, we have three parts of the logo, right? We have our company name, we have our tagline, and we have an icon relative to that. Those are the three parts, but then we have to figure out, well, what does it look like? What are the colors that people are going to be attracted to? And be attracted to based on what we do. Okay. I mean, like, and I know this is a simple example, but um, if you're in finance, you might want green, right? Just, this is a simple example, but every company
Imagine if
has,
you were in Wall Street with a hot pink logo. Might not
yeah, exactly. It's not going to work. Exactly. So color psychology is important in this process. And I have a perfect case study from years ago. A client came to us and they're saying, hey, how would you help us? And the first thing I did, whether they liked it or not, was I need to change your logo. And they were using such muted colors based on the fact that they're in the energy industry. And it just didn't work. And so I had to take them, literally, I had to educate them on what color psychology meant relative to their logo, relative to their branding. And then we took them in a different direction where the colors were more vibrant, they were stronger, right?
Yep.
We kind of started what they did, so color psychology is one thing. Steve, the piece that you mentioned is very interesting about this business is repetition, the psychology of repetition. Now, prior to the internet and everything else that we got going on today, if I go back 40 years ago in traditional media, when marketing was really not marketing per se, because it was all advertising. And so everybody just dumped all their money into advertising. But what advertising did based on print, radio, and television was repeat, 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 repeat. And
Yep.
repetition also mean, and I'm not saying that you have to spend ad dollars on this, but to the point that you made, Steve, repetition is about being out there for a long time. So the longer you're out there, the more likely people are to know who you are. They remember that logo, the guy's face, right? Or
Or a
the
TV commercial. Better get Mako.
right,
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
whatever.
Yep, exactly. And let's face it, if we go back to the old days, there are TV commercials that we'll remember even today, because But the reason we're remembering, aside from the fact that it might be cute, it might be
Catchy, whatever.
catchy or whatever, that it was the fact that it was repeated. We
Well, here's
saw it everywhere.
another good example. And first, I want to show you this because this right here is my tagline, my logo. But this is on all my letterhead. It's on
Yep.
all my business cards. I use the same colors everywhere to be consistent. But what I want to tell you was, and this is a larger company, but still it matters.
Mhm.
Southwest Airlines used to be known for the three F's. They were fun, low fares, and they had frequent flights all in the Midwest. And that was their plan of action. Now all of a sudden their new plan, in keeping in the same tone, is, well, now you can pick your own assigned seat. And they didn't have that before. But they're still sticking with the brand. You're going to get a fast fare. It's going to be fun. There's a video I show sometimes when I'm coaching of like these the guy does this rap song to like the guests on the plane, and it's all about Southwest Airlines and and the fun they're going to have. And it really was a fun experience. But that's the stuff that makes it memorable. And if you're consistently doing that messaging across, it really resonates.
I mean, that's this process. I guess that's the other thing, is it's a process, right? Not only is it a process, but you need patience. And the number one thing that a lot of businesses, small businesses in particular, miss out on is the fact that they're not patient. They're looking for the answers yesterday. If they're spending, if money's coming out of their pocket, they look at it as an expense upon which they need an ROI in 30 days or yesterday.
Mm.
And that is where we run into trouble. Um, I think the this idea of patience, the idea of discipline, is very important. I think the idea of understanding the difference between investment dollars versus expense.
Yeah.
So if I'm running ads, that's an expense, and I should get some type of ROI in some short time frame. But if I'm investing in my brand, that's a never-ending budget.
Yeah.
You don't stop.
That's cost of doing business, is what that
That's
is.
exactly. And you can't, and what you're doing there is supporting your sales team, you're supporting your business development, you are um uh it's the ROI is moons later. That's why you have to figure out how do you break your budget out, right? So are you in a position where you can say, hey, I got a fixed budget over here for branding and for
Mhm.
reputation and my visibility and my marketing, my that whole process. And then do I also have a budget that I can tack onto occasionally? Because it doesn't, I mean,
Is
we
it
live in a world where unless you have an endless budget, you're gonna have to pick and choose which night. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do ads for this 90-day period. Then I'm gonna take a break, and then I'm gonna go back at it. Right, that type of thing. And
but
so
is
that's how
it
you mix and
branding?
match.
Isn't branding like really part of your positioning, how you position your
Yes,
company?
I agree,
Your
100%.
brand, I think, really speaks to who you are, what you stand for. It goes along with your core values to your brand promise. What do you guarantee people?
Yeah.
That's very
I think that's
interesting.
important.
One of the things I spoke about, and a lot of people will spend a lot of money, and I mean a lot of money on their website, and they do focus on the brand. What does it look like? Some
Yeah.
people will take it to the next level. Let's say, you know what, I'm in this huge organization, I'm in this very, popular industry. I got to do some personal branding, or nothing's going to work. And I take it to the next level. I said, I want to know what your verbal branding is. What do you say and how do you say it in a way that people can understand exactly what you do? Now, the same way that in regular branding, if you're too generic, the chances of you really attracting your ideal client is not in your favor because you're too generic. The same
Right.
thing in your personal brand. If you look like I mean, I'm from New York. I would say 90%, and I'm totally guilty of this. If in the olden days when we used to go to these, really face to face networking event, I mean, the women are all in black, black dresses, black suits, black whatever. Women in New York wear black. I think that if I was to wear like another color, pink, I think I'd really break out in a rash. I don't think my body understands a color other than black. And guys are wearing either a dark blue, I mean, 90% of them are in dark blue suits. So what happens is everyone blends. So if a guy comes in and all of a sudden wears a different color as well, it's like everybody turns like, oh my God, this guy's got style, energy, and that alone draws you to people. So you want to think about what are you saying about your firm so that somebody can remember exactly what you do. How do you pull a rabbit out of a hat? So that also goes into what your brand is because people don't pay attention.
Hmm.
People have,
Well,
I mean, companies that
yeah.
I work with have so much experience in high level thinking. And unfortunately, they speak about their firm in such a generic way that they totally dilute their effectiveness. I mean, totally dilute their effectiveness.
I mean, I think what you're referring to is basically your brand is how people feel about you, right? I mean, like you were saying earlier, are you storytelling or boring telling? I mean, if you're boring telling, people don't feel anything about you. If you're storytelling, which is what a lot of people are looking for, is what is the story of that company? What's the story of the product? What is the story of the service? That if you're storytelling, then you're tapping into people's emotions, and I think that's where branding takes a whole nother spin. But if this is not something that I don't want to say. I'm going to say this loosely. It's not something that requires a ton of budget. It requires a consistent budget. Just find something you're comfortable with. It requires um, discipline. It requires patience. And you have to keep it up. And I cannot tell you how many times
And people
that
don't,
it
they quit too soon.
way too soon, way too soon. And and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they business entrepreneurs don't have a expectation ahead of time. They don't have a perspective on what it is that this should be doing. They're real good in the operation side of producing the product and the service, or in this, not especially nowadays, platforms, whatever. But they are pathetic at understanding how to go to market and all the different elements that are involved in going to market. Um, I mean, Steve, I can't remember if it was you or Freddie in one of our other previous shows, where you're talking about, your referral engine. I know Freddie talks a lot about, creating
Yeah,
super fans, right?
COIs. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
COI guy, centers of influence.
centers of influence. That's a good one. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but those are my referral partners. They're the ones that are out, that's my sales force. They're the ones that are out there beating the streets looking for opportunities. And I do
Mhm.
the same for them.
Absolutely. And I think that these are the types of things that make a huge difference at the end
See,
of the
when I go
day.
to my small business, what I call under the trades, I mean they're
Mhm.
normally not the most, I don't know, sophisticated or whatever. And this is where they miss. They go 100% sales. They can have 30 people in their sales
Yeah.
force and they have no marketing, but they have no marketing. They don't see any reason for marketing. So this is what the difference is. They say, Rochelle, what the hell is marketing? Leave me alone. Now, this is my example. Marketing is, what do you say in the business community, that brings the client to your door? It creates the awareness and brings the client to the door. Sales is when you open the door and then you have some sort of a conversation so that they actually purchase from you. One leads to the other. One leads to the other. And the thing that addresses the marketing is the branding. The branding makes the marketing strong. Now, and this, I have talk about a pet peeve. This is a biggie. I've gone to customers and they say, I said, who's doing your marketing right now? And they say, my Aunt Audrey's nephew is doing the marketing. And I'm like, excuse me? You've got a 20-year
Right.
old, literally a
Exactly.
20-year-old kid that's, I said, hello, I'm missing something. Your 20-year-old kid, there's no disrespect for that, but what they know how to do is use an iPhone. They
Yep.
don't understand marketing. They don't understand strategy. They don't understand, as you would say, Steve, who's your ideal client? They don't have the big business background that they can connect to the efforts needed to create the visibility. They're good at generating the visibility because they know how to use an iPhone. And then
Yeah.
I said to somebody, here's my biggest, let's take this to the next step. There are two faucets. One is marketing and one is sales. When you open up those faucets, out comes money. Why would you leave the most valuable portion of your business to a 20-year-old that doesn't have a business background in charge of your money?
Right.
Like, I wouldn't give them the takeout menu to order lunch for everybody. Why would you allow the person with the least experience in business
What
responsible for the most important part of your business, the
I think
part
to
that
stay
brings in the
politically correct,
revenue?
their age is irrelevant. But to give somebody who doesn't know what the heck they're doing your money doesn't make sense. I agree.
No, I mean, and this is a good, I agree with you on the small business level, the fact that, we'll use friends and family to figure things out, which
Yeah,
unfortunately a lot of them do
I
it.
agree.
But that's not marketing, it's not branding, it's not a marketing process, it's nothing. It's just a bunch of tasks that are being executed. And, the moment the tasks stop, everything shuts down. So
If you
there's
plan to
no,
fail,
That
you
don't
can,
even
if you
make
fail
right.
to
sense.
plan, you can
There's
plan to
no
fail. That's all there
there's
is
no
to it.
residual value in that scenario. But if I turn it around and bring this to another version that I've used with businesses, and it's very similar to Rochelle's example, is, and for all of us, that are of specific age, where we have this knowledge and this experience, one of the things that I've used in the past is I've asked clients that are closer in my age, I said, at what point in history was your printer your ad agency? And all of a sudden light bulbs go off. It's like, yes, you've been hiring the tech guy who is like the printer of yesteryear to do your advertising and your marketing. And that doesn't mean that they understand marketing and advertising. All that means that they're executing a service, or they're providing a service, and
Yeah.
they're executing tasks. And that's it. Now, that doesn't give you residual value, because the moment you stop that, everything shuts down. So the
Yep.
question is, how do you create residual value? And that's where branding comes into play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
branding speaks about your firm when you're not. Branding
Just
is
like the
something.
guy's face on that truck. All you got to do is see his face, and you know it's a good, reputable company, even though he sold it 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah,
But it's called
exactly.
branding.
Right? That's branding.
It's
Exactly.
branding.
Also, if you are going to sell your company down the road, the stronger your brand, the higher the sale value of your firm.
Yes, ma'am. So true.
Absolutely.
So
I mean,
true.
and the difference is pretty extreme.
And you
Extreme.
actually want to
The
make
difference between
yourself
having or
redundant.
not having a sellable. It's the difference between having and not having a sellable, scalable business.
Well, think about how much
Exactly.
more valuable it is if you, the owner, is not necessary or needed. You're a redundant item. Think
Yep.
about how much more valuable it really is. Now anybody can run it. And like this guy, his
Mhm.
face is on the truck, but he's not running it.
Yeah, he's gone. And it doesn't make a difference. People are emotionally
Well,
tied to that
To that
face, right?
that image, right?
so I have
Exactly.
a question, Melih. How would you suggest some of our early business owners that are coming to look at, that are joining us? What was like one or two things that you would suggest to somebody to get started and create and like slowly but surely, because you don't do a brand overnight, it's over time.
No.
So
Yeah.
how would you suggest somebody to start taking the first or second really pivotal steps to start creating the brand?
So I'm going to use an example of a project we did several years ago. Time flies when you're having fun. And here's what I'm going to tell you. The budget was 100% the same month over month. Right. And give me a minute, Rochelle, because I'm going to answer your question here. The budget was identical. The number of people working on the project, identical month over month. The amount of content that we created. Well, I don't care, blog posts, right, social media images, um, videos, PDFs, whatever. Okay, the amount of content we created month over month was identical. Everything being the same month over month. The project, which was a brand new company with no brand value whatsoever, the project, and I still have the Google Analytics of this. It's very cool. All of a sudden, in the first month, at the end of the first month, there was like whatever, I'm ballpark right now, I think 60,000 or 70,000 people that visited the website. The second month, that jumped up to 250.
Wow.
The third month, it jumped up to, I can't remember, like 400,000. By the time we got to the end of the fourth month, and we're hitting into the fifth month, we had an 800, no lie, 824,000 people coming to the website in 1 month.
What's the
Nothing,
differentiator?
right? What's the differentiator? So to answer your question, Rochelle, is I'm going to say the consistency and the frequency. That's what made a difference. We had a compounding effect month over month, purely based on everything being consistent. We're posting the same amount. We're hitting the
Yeah.
market in the same way. And more importantly, again, answering Rochelle's question here, it's the same logo, it's the same colors, it's the same repetition over and over again, right? That's what made the difference over here. And honestly, that project still to this day sticks in my mind because the results were far greater than I had imagined when I put the strategy together.
That's
And
cool.
and when the client, as you can imagine, by the time we got to the December and January, we paused the project. And in December and January that year, we sat down and I wanted to know, why did we get these results? Yes, they're phenomenal. It's great,
Right.
but it shouldn't have been this. It shouldn't have been this exponential result. And what caused it? And so when we started to analyze all the different data points that we had available to us, frequency, consistency, and repetition. Those three things resulted in those types of
So
results.
now I'm going to ask you, I think you're speaking too generic. What was
Okay.
frequent? What was consistent? What? When you say
Well, right.
frequency,
And I mentioned that. So the frequency, the what was the content, the videos that we produce, 5 videos a month, 5 blog posts a month, right? Whatever, 20 images for social media marketing a month. The PDFs that we created, 5 of them per month. It was the same volume of all that content. And then with discipline being pushed out to the market through social media, through email marketing, through newsletters, through press releases, through blah, blah, blah. Okay. All the different multi-channel marketing elements that we had available to us, everything was the same. And that's where the difference, like I said, consistency, frequency, and discipline.
I find I miss like 1 week of sending my email newsletter out, and I hear about it.
Yeah.
Here's your newsletter. I'm sorry. I took the week off. I'm human.
Yeah.
I think it's great that marketing notices that, because I think we're so bombarded with a lot of quote unquote emails and there's a lot of volume that we're getting. So that's why the other reason is I think you need to have a volume and frequency, because let's just say you send out, I don't know, I'm just using this as an example, one thing a week. If your client doesn't open it for 3 weeks, at least they'll open the third one or the fourth one. If you send once a month, if they don't open it the first month and they don't open the second month, their
They've
connection to
forgotten you
you
now.
is
Yeah.
10 weeks down the road.
Yeah.
It's
All right,
10 weeks.
guys. We're going to slowly wrap it up as we get closer to our half-hour mark. And on that note, it's time for our takeaways. So, Steve, you want to start it off?
Be consistent. Have the faith. Keep the faith. Do something the same over and over and over and over and over again, and it will pay off.
I want people to realize that they can start small. The smaller your business, the more important this is. Start small. You don't have to start off with this massive production factory, because I think that can overwhelm. Start small, and because we said it's consistent over time, you can add to things, you can test things. And if you start small, you're in the game. If you think that I have to start large, you'll never get started.
And we have touched on this idea of starting small and doing bite-sized work
Yeah.
versus trying to cover everything all at one time. My takeaway from today is very similar to what we're saying. Brand marketing is not about big moments. Brand marketing is about consistent, frequent, and disciplined actions. I mean, we have to stay focused on that. And on that note, guys, thank you very much for joining us today on Business Lunatics. That wraps up this week's show. Hit follow, hit subscribe, join the Loonies next week with more no fluff, no BS, and just pure business madness. Thank you very much.
Thank you.